The crystal chandelier above the mahogany dining table hummed with a low, electric vibrato that seemed to vibrate inside my skull. It was Christmas Day, the day of perfect family gatherings, but the air in my father's dining room felt like a pressurized chamber. The scent of roasted rosemary chicken and expensive Pinot Noir, which I had personally ordered and paid for via a discreet delivery service, filled the room. I sat there, my fingers tracing the rim of my wine glass. I looked at my father, Arthur. He looked every bit the patriarch in his velvet smoking jacket, his hair perfectly silvered, leaning back with a self-assured grace that he hadn't earned. Then, the hammer dropped. "Elena," my father said, his voice dropping into a tone of practiced, weary disappointment. He didn't look at me, he looked at his wine. "You have to stop this. You have to stop begging for money. It's Christmas, and frankly, we're all exhausted by your constant handouts." The silence that followed was deafening. My fork clattered against the fine china. I looked around the table. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My brother, Marcus, looked away, hiding a smirk behind his napkin. But it was my sister, Bianca, who twisted the knife. She leaned forward, her diamond earrings, the ones I had given her for her birthday, catching the light. "It's just so pathetic, Elle," she whispered, though the room was quiet enough for everyone to hear. "We've all worked so hard for what we have. Seeing you constantly scraping at Dad's heels, it's embarrassing for the family name." "Everyone agrees," my father added, his voice calm, level, and utterly sociopathic in its dishonesty. "We've decided. No more. Not a cent. You need to learn the value of $1, even if you learn it in the gutter." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even defend myself. I just felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me, like a fever breaking. For 5 years, I had played the role of the struggling artist sister while secretly building a venture capital empire under a corporate veil they couldn't pierce. For 5 years, I had quietly funneled 6 figures a month into the family trust they all lived off of, letting them believe it was the remnants of my grandfather's wise investments. I stood up slowly. I didn't look at the food. I didn't look at the gifts under the tree, all of which were bought with my black card. "I understand," I said. My voice was a whisper, devoid of emotion. "You're right. It's time to stop." I walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Bianca laugh. Finally, she gets the hint. I walked out into the crisp, biting December air, got into my car, a modest sedan I kept specifically for family visits, and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number that didn't go to a friend or a boyfriend. It went to a private line in Zurich. "This is Elena Vance," I said, my breath fogging the windshield. "Identity verification, Echo 79er. I need to execute a total liquidity freeze on the Final 21 distribution account. Immediate effect. No grace period." The bank manager on the other end didn't hesitate. "Understood, Ms. Vance. The Final 21 account funds the primary household dividends for the Vance estate, correct? This will cut all lines of credit and recurring payments." "Do it," I said. "And transfer the deed of the Greenwich property from the holding company to my personal portfolio. It's time for the tenants to vacate." To understand why I did it, you have to understand the lie we lived. My father, Arthur Vance, was a man of prestige but no substance. He had lost the last of the actual family fortune when I was 18 in a series of disastrous real estate gambles. He was too proud to admit he had failed, so he spent the next decade pretending. I was the one who saw the bank notices. I was the one who stayed up late at night in my college dorm, learning how to trade, how to build, how to scale. By 24, I had made my first million. By 27, I was worth more than my father ever dreamed of. But I knew my family. I knew that if they knew I had money, they wouldn't just ask for it, they would demand it. They would claim it was family property. So, I created the Final 21 account. I told my father I had found a forgotten trust in my grandfather's name. I let him think he was the one managing it, even though he had no access to the principal. I gave them a life of luxury. I paid for Bianca's 3 weddings and 2 divorces. I paid for Marcus's startups that were really just excuses for him to party in Ibiza. I paid for the very roof over their heads. And my reward? To be the family scapegoat. They needed someone to look down on to feel better about their unearned status. I was the beggar because I wore off-brand clothes and didn't brag. I allowed them to believe I was the one taking, so they wouldn't realize I was the one giving. Until tonight. The lie he told at dinner wasn't just a lie, it was a power play to humiliate me in front of Bianca's new wealthy fiancé. He wanted to look like the benevolent, suffering father. Fine. Let him be the father. Let's see how he fares without the benefactor. The fallout didn't take weeks. It took hours. The next morning, Boxing Day, the Final 21 freeze hit like a silent earthquake. I spent the morning in my penthouse in the city, the one they didn't know existed, sipping coffee and watching the notifications on my tablet. First, the secondary household cards were declined. These were the cards Bianca used for her post-Christmas shopping sprees. By 11 a.m., my phone began to vibrate. It was Bianca. I let it go to voicemail. Elena? Are you doing something to the accounts? My card just got declined at Hermes. It's probably just a glitch, but if you're messing around because of last night, stop it. It's embarrassing. An hour later, Marcus called. Then my mother. Then, finally, the lion himself. I picked up on the 10th ring. Elena, my father bellowed. He sounded panicked, the calm facade from dinner completely shattered. There's been a mistake at the bank. The trust account is frozen. All of it. The mortgage payment for the estate bounced this morning, and the staff's payroll is blocked. I need you to call your little contacts at the bank and fix this. Why would I do that, Dad? I asked, reclining in my leather chair. You told me to stop begging for money. You told me I needed to learn the value of $1. I've taken your advice to heart. I'm no longer involved with your finances. Don't be a child, he screamed. This is family money. This is our legacy. No, Dad, I said, my voice dropping an octave. It was my money. There was no grandfather's trust. I built that account. I funded every vacation, every bottle of wine, and every lie you told yourself. And since I'm so pathetic, I decided to stop being your ATM. There was a long, jagged silence on the other end. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. You're lying, he whispered. You're a failure. You've always been a failure. Check the ownership of the house, Dad. Check the deed for the Vance estate. It's held by EV Ventures. Want to guess what EV stands for? I hung up. The next few days were a symphony of chaos. The Final 21 freeze triggered a domino effect. Without the monthly infusion of cash, my father's private debts he'd hidden even from my mother, came screaming to the surface. Creditors who had been kept at bay by the steady flow of interest payments from my account suddenly found the tap dry. I watched through the security cameras I had installed at the estate, under the guise of protection. I saw the repo men come for the cars. I saw Bianca screaming at a man in a suit as he towed her convertible. I saw my father standing on the front porch, looking old and frail, realizing that the gutter he had threatened me with was now rising to meet him. 2 weeks later, I returned to the estate. Not as a guest, but as the owner. The house was cold. They couldn't afford the heating bill. The grand Christmas tree was brown and dropping needles across the floor. My family sat in the living room, huddled around a single space heater. They looked different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate fear. Bianca stood up when I walked in, her face blotchy from crying. "Elena, please. We didn't know." Dad said it was his. "We're sorry. Just turn the accounts back on. We can't live like this." "You were so quick to call me pathetic," I said, looking at her. "You enjoyed it. You needed me to be beneath you so you could feel high. How does the floor feel, Bianca?" She flinched and looked away. My father sat in his chair, his velvet jacket stained. He didn't look up. "You've humiliated me," he croaked. "Your own father. You humiliated yourself the moment you lied to your family to stroke your own ego," I replied. "I didn't destroy this family, Arthur. I just stopped pretending to be the glue holding your delusions together." I set a manila envelope on the coffee table. "The house is being sold," I said. "I've already accepted an offer from a developer. You have 72 hours to pack your personal belongings. There is a small apartment in the city, a 2-bedroom. It's paid for 1 year. After that, Marcus, you'll have to get a job. Bianca, you might want to sell those diamonds I bought you. Dad, you can live on Social Security. I hear it's what people who understand the value of $1 do. You can't do this." Marcus yelled, though there was no heart in it. "I already did," I said. The final 21 was the end of the line. I gave you 21 chances to treat me like a human being instead of a resource. Last night was the 21st. I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I paused. "Oh, and Dad? Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoyed the dinner. It was the most expensive meal you'll ever have." I walked out of the house and didn't look back. The air was still cold, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the chill. I felt the warmth of a fire I had finally walked away from, a fire that had been fueled by my own spirit for far too long. I drove back to the city, to my life, to the world I had built with my own 2 hands. The silence in the car wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. The revenge wasn't in the poverty I left them in, it was in the freedom I finally gave myself. They had always called me a beggar. But as I watched the estate disappear in my rearview mirror, I knew the truth. I was the only one who had ever been rich. The end.